The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, it's time for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to journalists and writers and filmmakers and producers and videographers, photographers, anybody involved in Bronx media and kind of talking to the people of the Bronx. And this evening we have two very different sorts of guests. We have one BronxNet producer who's had her own show, who now has a one-woman show, and it is this, I Am You. It's probably more you than me, but that's another story. And also we'll talk to one of the best writers at City Limits about some of the very important issues going on in the borough of the Bronx. But right now, it is my pleasure to welcome back to the Bronx Buzz, KittyRose. How are you? Congratulations on everything that you got going on.
Thank you so much.
And I know it's not been easy because you go from one project to the other project. So now the show Natural Sessions is on hiatus now.
That's correct.
And that has been on BronxNet Wednesdays at midnight.
That's correct.
For all us late night people, that does include me. And eventually in the fall it'll come back.
Yep.
So now we're talking about I Am You. Before we even talk about the I, talk about who is the you that we're talking about that this is really about.
All of us, because I really do believe that we're just reflections of each other.
Mm-hmm. And how close to Natural Sessions and what you had done for BronxNet is this? Talk to me about the development of this and how we got to this point.
Well, Natural Sessions is a talk show to give tools for people to move forward in whatever dilemmas or life experiments that they go through. And we have this in a conversational type setting. So since my purpose of the show is healing through television or through the magic of TV. Communication, thank you. I was stuck on a word.
Well, that's why they brought me here.
Yeah. The show is the same kind of concept in regards to the purpose is to heal. I'm not here anymore just to entertain. To me, there has to be some type of, in that entertainment, purpose, direction to still heal ourselves as a people, as a community. So I'm using the show as a sacrificial lamb, telling my story, which is the story of most of us, if not all of us. Many of us. Okay. So that we know it's okay, which is the same thing like Natural Sessions.
What is you're relating it directly to healing. Mm-hmm. What is the healing that's necessary? Like
accountability.
What is the vulnerabilities that we have, and how are you providing something that's going to give it some perspective?
Two things. Accountability starts with the healing, but we can't be accountable when we're bogged down by shame or embarrassment because of the things that we've done, which is just simply life experiments. So I feel like the healing starts with, I'll give an example. Right now we're in a climate where everyone's angry and they want to be moved to change. They want to do things to bring about change in the climate, change in the government, change period. But with all this wanting to make change, if we don't start with ourselves, all that outside change is kind of pointless. So we have to kind of start with self-reflection, self-healing, self-accountability so that we can actually be a powerful force out there.
I use the word vulnerability, and you have over the years and with Natural Sessions really talked about things that happened in your life that were very difficult. And from what I've seen, the clips that we've seen of the show, we're going to show you a piece of the show in just a little bit, you must have had to undergo a transition to get to a point where you could talk about some really very personal things and present it in a way that people could relate to. Talk about some of those things. You can be as specific as you want. She's looking, can I really say what I have to say?
You guys
but no, I just want to get into why people will understand this is something they can relate to.
because
I know I ask really tough questions. I'm so bad.
well, not necessarily. I'm learning in the process of to narrow down my answers because I'm so passionate about what it is I'm talking about and what it is that I'm doing that sometimes I can become a little long-winded. So it's just a matter of figuring out in my head how to answer the question directly. But I feel that if not me, then who? And again, why me? In 45 years, I really,
She already told us how old she is. That's fine.
I've had the same ups and downs as everyone most, but for the most part, I've had a good life. I have a good life. I have children I love who, like me, love me sometimes, most times.
Well, they're teenagers, so we get what it's about.
Right. I've been able to have a successful show on BronxNet for the last almost going into my 4th season. I mean, everything I pretty much have set my mind to, I've been able to accomplish. So I think that sometimes we get in our own way. So when you kind of see an example of someone else who maybe looks like you, maybe acts like you, maybe doesn't, but you know that person, I think it takes away the idea that you can't do it.
You know that I know you well for a while.
Yes.
Personal relationships, things in the structure of society, whether it be financial and others, things that are around you, people that are around you who are always a challenge. You may not love that everything that you ever did or participated in, but that, I mean, to me, I know those are the things that come out in this. So let's show the clip. It's a short clip.
Yes.
It's about 30 seconds long. And if some of what we've said has been a little bit vague, well, I kind of get an idea. I think you're going to get a real idea from this very short, it's about 30, 40 seconds.
Strap on.
KittyRose, I am you. And, maybe it is you, maybe it is me. Who knows? Let's see.
Let's see.
You is a comedic satire monologue reflecting on the last 25 years of my life.
When we met, he told me he didn't want a relationship. He told me he was not looking for a woman. 2 years ago, I had got off of welfare.
Realizing we are all simply reflections of each other.
28 years I had spent collecting public assistance.
You can't be, yes, of course, a little applause. But you can't live and grow up in the Bronx, especially as a female, and not have to deal with relationships. I mean, because we live so close together,
Right.
There's so much pressure. Just talk about what that's like, even growing up in the Bronx and,
Well,
and coming of age in the Bronx.
Well, I think it was Dr. Maya Angelou, I'm not sure, so don't quote me, who said when people show you who they are, believe them, or when people tell you who they are, believe them. And that clip was a perfect example that sometimes we think that we can change someone's feelings or view of how they're entering the relationship or dynamics that their contract that they're entering with you. And sometimes we think because we get confused between, how can I say this politically? We get confused between someone having sex with you and someone
Loving
effing
you.
No.
Having sex
And-
and then doing something
Right.
really bad to you.
Well, not really bad, but the opposite
Yeah,
of
taking advantage.
not even taking
Oh,
advantage.
I'm trying, I swear.
the rough, the straight, this without love and passion.
Okay.
But because you've gotten caught up in the routine of that, you get confused that it's love and passion.
And you lose sight of what might really be important.
Exactly.
Talk to me about, and we're doing a lot of discussion now of transitions, and by the way, it is real talk, and that's
Yes.
what the show has been about. Talk about the transition of taking what you did at Natural Sessions and then how you created this. Do you sit and script it? Is it the kind of thing, well, this is what I feel like talking about tonight? Just describe some of that process.
Well, just like Natural Sessions, I had to take my next phase of my life into my own hands. This year, I got caught up in collaborating with bigger names or bigger organizations, thinking that that would help broaden my visibility, broaden my name. And 4 things I was involved in when I started 2019. Big budget projects, and none of them came through. And one day I'm sitting watching a television show, and I'm watching a comedian tell his story in a small, like, little bar. Couldn't have been no more than 20, 30 people smoking a cigarette, just talking. And I was like, I do that every week on Natural Sessions. And what I said is, you know what? People are fascinated or connected to me. Let me get out of my own way trying to collaborate with others and just invest in myself.
And so I Am You, I guess the next showing is September 28th.
Yes, I had my debut August 9th, and it was sold out.
Sold out, wow. And should I ask how many people in the house?
72 seats, baby.
There you go. And so it's taking place at the Producers Bar and Theater Club on West 44th Street, 358 West 44th, off Broadway between 8th and 9th. Tickets are just $25. Believe me, you can see a much more expensive show that's not as important and not as personal as this one is. And they find you. How do they find you, or to get to? You need tickets ahead of time.
You can buy at the door, but it's best to buy beforehand because
the
the
last one
tickets
sold out.
But you can find me online. You know, you guys have all the information, and I make it simple. Miss Kitty Rose 1.
Ms. MS?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Kitty Rose, Kitty Rose, numeral 1.
Amen.
And there you go. Listen, congratulations on I Am You.
Gary.
And again, how scripted is it? Very scripted? Not
It
that
wasn't scripted until last night when I was made by investors to actually do a script. But it's me talking in a scripted form.
In a kind of a framework.
Outline framework.
There
Yes,
you go.
thank you.
All right, well, that's what, maybe you should invite me. I can really provide some framework.
Well, I do need some more producers.
There you go. Ms. Kitty Rose, congrats. Good luck.
you, Gary.
And everybody get out there September 28th. What day of the week is that?
It's a Saturday.
A Saturday. Everybody loves
Yes.
Saturday night at the Producers Bar on West 44th Street.
Yes.
All right, there we go. Hey, we're going to take a break. We're going to switch gears here and get into some real important topics with one of the writers at City Limits. Don't go away. More Bronx Buzz coming up.
Cute now, but when my owner lost his job, it was rough. I was living on the street, and one night, me and this Cocker Spaniel got into it so bad, I wound up looking like an ice cream cone. I cried a little bit, but thankfully I got rescued, so I'm running, I'm jumping, all back to my old self, and I'm ready to give unconditional love, even if you put a lampshade on my head.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family? This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort,
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything. Oh, sorry. Go along, son.
it's always worth it.
Whoa, faster!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
Hey, it's Ava, and this is Tess from Vivo's Do It Yourselfie, where we recreate the hottest looks from today's biggest music videos.
After cleaning out our closet, we have a lot of clothes we don't wear anymore.
Like this old t-shirt.
It's not garbage, it's actually a brand new rug.
And to make it, all you need to do is cut, tie, and glue.
Cut the t-shirt into strips.
Tie the strips into knots.
And glue the knots to the bath mat. I love it. Give your garbage another life.
And recycle.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. As I said, we're switching gears, we're switching hats, although I don't have a hat. And we're going to bring in our buddy Sadef Ali Kully, who is with City Limits, and she writes some of the most important articles that they have at City Limits. She's been on our show a few times, and we hope we're going to be a few more into the future. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
The first thing I want to talk about is this story that you wrote about the storefront vacancies. Now, what I think a lot of us do when we want to judge the health of a community or a business district, you say, well, wait a minute. Do they have enough, are there a lot of vacant stores there? And we say, oh, look at this. There's got 2 or 3 vacancies. And then that would suggest that something in the kind of the commerce process is not healthy. So let's talk in general about the DCP, the Department of City Planning, that did a study, and of course what the implications are for it and the Bronx.
The timing of the Department of City Planning's report was very interesting because just a few weeks before that, the City Council had passed legislation where they wanted to track, where advocates had been pushing for the city to track vacant storefronts and for the reasons why, like what properties, how many properties are vacant, why are they sitting vacant, to understand how to help like small businesses. And the Department of Small Businesses Services, the city's Department of Small Business Services, has been tasked with providing that data in the future. And right after that, DCP released this report where it surveyed about 10,000 storefronts in 24 corridors, including the Bronx. It looked at Morris Park, Kingsbridge, and Longwood, and kind of found many different reasons that one of the main arguments a lot of advocates have had, small business advocates have had, is that rising rents have been a huge issue for...
Out of control, I'm just going to say it. I mean, no, really, the commercial rents, people complain about, the rent is too damn high for their residences, but the commercial rents, and when you say to a small store, you've got to make 10 grand a month. Right. And I'm just going to throw that number out, but that does happen in a small business district. How do you raise that much money? That's a lot of money to raise every month. It's
something that's a question on every small business owner's mind, like how to raise money to continue their business sustainably. And so they found that rising rents wasn't the only reason. There are like several reasons in the report, from market shifts. What they found in the report was that there's been a shift from dry goods like clothing to more services industry shift. So you would see more restaurants and bars now because people are buying online. There's like this e-commerce market that's really changing the dynamics of the small owner.
Let's just talk about the reality of that. So let's just, and we can use, because one of the areas was Kingsbridge and Broadway and 231st Street. So you had a clothing store and you sold dresses and all right, maybe you're not able easily to compete with Macy's or some of the others. But now anybody who's even buying jeans or buying shirts or buying a nice tie, they can just do that online. And your little store, I mean, as the rents are going up, how can you keep up?
So Kingsbridge and I believe Morris Park both were under vacant. They had the low vacancy, and Morris Park showed like steady consumership. So although it wasn't an extremely vibrant corridor, but they had a steady consumer base that was coming and going. Longwood was one of the neighborhoods
challenged.
The more challenging neighborhoods where they're seeing high overturn of stores, where a store is staying open just for like a few months at a time.
Among the things when you started talking about what are the factors, yes, obviously rent, but then you have to analyze income level of the surrounding communities so that if prices are going up, can they afford it? There's just so many things. Accessibility to the areas. I mean, can people get there, whether it be mass transit or if they are driving, is there parking in the neighborhood? I know we were just talking about it before, and people in Morris Park or business owners are concerned about the possible limiting of parking spaces. That could be an area that people, there's just many factors. The other thing I want to bring up, and you know this as well, if not better than anybody, you wonder that because it's coming from the Department of City Planning, is it the city's way of scouting whether or not we want to rezone an area like they did on Jerome Avenue, and we're prospectively using it Southern Boulevard? I hate to be the paranoid one,
Right.
but maybe there's an ulterior motive of that kind of analysis.
I don't.
You don't
I
think
don't.
so?
I don't want to speculate on that at all.
Well, that's me, the talk show host versus the journalist.
I think that I think it's really important that the city definitely is. This is not a bad direction that the city is heading in, where they're trying to collect this data, and it'll be really informative for advocacy groups across the city, for small business owners to kind of understand what their place is and how they can shift their marketing strategy, or they could even change, the way that they run their business model based on the information that they receive. I think it'll be helpful.
So they could provide some technical advice. And
Exactly. I think it
assistance.
would be helpful in that sense. I don't know if it would go further than that. I
You wouldn't speculate, but
no.
she'll be the first to report it. I can tell you that if it comes up. The other thing that you look at, so you're trying to make a judgment. The city is trying to make a judgment, an overall judgment about trends. But we've got 62 neighborhoods, and you're looking at 3 neighborhoods. So I'm just off the top of my head, I don't know. You're thinking about West Farms,
Right.
Or even you want to look at Bay Plaza,
Right.
Or other areas. They may have other factors, and so we're studying 3 neighborhoods.
Right.
You could just, and I'm going to throw out other factors, and then we're going to change the subject. Also, the rules for requiring
Right.
better support for employees, the health coverage, and also providing for whether it be minimum wage or other requirements. Those can all factor in the nature of a small business. This one may have to deal with it. This one not able to deal with it.
Right.
So complex.
Right.
This is what we're looking at. Do you want to draw a conclusion about where you think this is ultimately going, this study?
Well,
Or
I
we're gonna
would.
wait
I
and
would
see
love to
more?
get the numbers from the SBS report that the advocates have passed through the city council, through the legislation. And once that bill has been signed by the mayor, then I would love to get my hands on that data. That would be really helpful and informative.
So what you did was basically present that it's being studied and all that, but the conclusions are not out there.
We don't know any. We don't have affirmative conclusions yet.
I want to talk about credit checks. You also wrote a story on credit checks for affordable housing. Boy, this, just like the other one, this has just immense implications into other areas. So why don't you lay out what it means, and then we'll try and break it down.
This is actually an incredible shift in the city policy. Credit, if anyone knows about applying for affordable housing lottery, it's pretty much like trying to get a federal government job. It takes forever, and it's very complicated, and there are background checks. You have to wait months and months to get your foot in the door.
Figuratively and literally.
What the city has done is that they've made credit checks optional. So this kind of opens up the doors for who can apply as well. A social security number is no longer required, and neither is and for those that are undocumented,
I was waiting for you to say it. If not, I was going to jump right in.
They have individual taxpayer identification numbers, which are better known as ITINs. So they used to use ITINs in the place of social security numbers to apply for the housing lottery. So you don't need either of those if you can show a 12 months of consistent rent payment history, positive, what the city calls positive rent payments. And either that, or if you've had a credit check done in the last 30 days and it fits the requirements of the city's credit check, then you can use that as well. So this is a big change. It'll open up the doors, because there are many people that the city says, and advocates have said that there's many people that may not have good credit check. One argument that I heard is maybe I don't pay my cell phone bill on time, but I'm making sure I'm paying my rent on time.
And so if you're applying
so-
for housing, I'm going to ask it out. Why should how you paid your cell phone bill or your relationship with Verizon,
Right.
or AT&T or whatever it is, why should that affect your ability to get an apartment?
Exactly.
I guess again the implications. So that affects. Hopefully, the city can then drive down the number of homeless people because more people then can qualify for the affordable housing, right? I mean, that
This would be the housing for homeless people is like set up. It will definitely help them as well. They're obviously the most vulnerable in our.
The other thing before we run out of time is obviously it enters into the center of the immigration question. Should undocumenteds, and this is a new way of defining what a sanctuary city might do, right?
Right. This is part of like furthering that. Like sanctuary city policy, I think. Definitely in that direction. The other thing that the city has done is credit checks can't be, the maximum amount you can be charged for a credit or background check should be either less than or equal to $20. It can't be more than $20.
So it's funny, you could use that as a vehicle to get somebody so
right.
that they
so
can't
no,
get...
there are people out there that charge you $75 for your background check. So people are, there will be more of that. And they also, to change the dynamics of what type of family applies for what housing, what type of house, housing unit. So before, only one person could apply for a studio apartment, but now one or two people can apply for a studio apartment.
We are essentially out of time. As I said, the implications of all these things, the commercial, the residential, but you are just the absolute best. Sadef Ali Kully, we are going to keep reading you in City Limits. And thanks for joining us tonight. As I said, we've only tipped the iceberg, got the tip of the iceberg. We'll do more and more as you come back.
All right, great.
Thank you so much. Great. I think that's the way we're going to end the show. We're going to say good night. Good night. We'll see you next week on Bronx Talk. Next week, I believe the chair of the Bronx County Democratic Organization will join us on Bronx Talk. That'll be Monday night at 9 o'clock. Good night.